The views expressed on the following broadcasts do not necessarily reflect those of KHLT, Take 12 Radio, or our affiliates. The opinions on this show should not be considered as medical, psychological, or professional advice and are those of the host, co-host, and guest. Take 12 Radio and KHLT Recovery Broadcasting are not affiliated with any particular 12-step fellowship. And now, here are your co-hosts, Eve D., Bruce H., and the Monty'man.
Greetings and welcome aboard. Welcome to the great reality here. Eve is here and Bruce is here. Hey, guys.
Hi.
Howdy.
Guy and gal. Happy. This week, it's Melissa T's birthday. Happy birthday, Melissa.
Happy birthday, Melissa.
Birthday, Melissa.
Yeah, we miss her. She was a lot of fun when she was here. She's in, what is
She's
she in?
a wonderful woman of God.
Minnesota? Is it Minnesota?
Minnesota, one of those.
Yeah.
Yes, I think it is Minnesota.
I think, yes, indeed. Well, this week we are...
Or is it Michigan?
Michigan.
Okay.
That's what it is.
All
Michigan.
right. I know it's one of the M
Michigan.
words. M states.
The M states. Sorry, Melissa. Happy birthday. Made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. Step 4. We are seeking to understand Step 4 this week as the topic, understanding Step 4. Before we do, though, I'm sad to say that Matthew Perry, who was one of the actors in the series, the sitcom Friends,
Yes.
will not be part of the reunion show. But it's also, there's a misunderstanding on the internet that there is actually a Friends reunion show. If you think that, you're wrong. That's kind of a hoax. What they're doing is they're doing a celebration of Jim Burrows, who was the director of Friends and many other shows. And the Friends cast is going to be involved, but Matthew Perry is not going to be involved. So just FYI for those of you who are Friends fans, because a lot of people, the internet's blowing up. Oh, Friends reunion. No, it's not. The other 5 are going to be on this special, Matthew Perry says, and I'm going to introduce them from London. I'm doing a play here, so I can't be there. The actor who played Chandler Bing in the beloved American sitcom is performing The End of Longing, a play which he wrote and stars in the UK. Talking about the themes of the play, Perry described it as a darker version of Friends, and said that it's a semi-autobiographical piece. Perry says, I play a drunk, so it's slightly exaggerated. It's a slightly exaggerated form of myself, but it's not really me, Perry said. But when fellow guest Miriam Margolis asked whether Matthew really is an alcoholic, he revealed, yes, I am.
Good for him.
I am, he confirmed. I'm a recovering alcoholic. I'm glad we're talking about this. The star has previously opened up about his alcohol and drug addiction, revealing that he suffered with the illness through the recording of Friends. And that came out several years ago, that he was struggling with prescription drugs and alcohol. But just to put the rumor at rest, there was not a Friends reunion. Okay?
All right, then.
All right. Page 2.
I didn't even know about it.
I didn't either.
He's so innocent.
I don't have a TV, so.
And that's up.
You guys are unscathed. Well, a Los Angeles Superior Court Judge Rita Miller dismissed a lawsuit filed against Alcoholics Anonymous World Services Incorporated. This isn't the first time AA has been sued, by the way. And the General Service Board of Alcoholics Anonymous, Inc., last Tuesday for their alleged role in the death of Carla Brada. The lawsuit was filed by Brada's parents, Hector and, I can't even pronounce it, Mendez. They contend that Brada was murdered by Eric Earl, Brada's boyfriend, because Alcoholics Anonymous concealed his violent history. Interesting.
Oh, boy.
Earl was convicted and sentenced to 26 years to life for suffocating Brada at the condo the couple shared in Saugus. Mendez, whatever her first name is, I can't pronounce, Mendez, Brada's mother, says that AA is ultimately responsible for the death of her daughter because of the policies they have in place regarding the anonymous status of its criminal members. This has been in the news before.
Yes, that was also on Facebook. I read that.
Yes. Anonymity is, quote, anonymity is a way to protect the member who's not yet here, said a spokesperson for the General Service Office of AA, who asked to remain anonymous. Do tell. It's for the member who hasn't reached out yet, so when they do, they can do it anonymously. Mendez alleges when an individual attends an AA meeting, quote, you could be sitting next to a violent criminal or sex offender and you don't even know it, end quote. That is true.
Yes, it is.
That is true. According to AA, the organization reaches people through principles, not personalities. Well, when we preach people on only our principles, we can give a consistent message, said the AA spokesperson. There is no membership list, no requirements to join, and we ask no questions. We only ask, are you ready to stop drinking? Mendez hoped that the lawsuit brought allegations AA would force them to change their policy, fat chance, with regards to anonymity for criminals who attend their meetings. So here's my question. If you're a criminal, actively, are you going to let anybody know?
Thanks for clarifying that.
Yeah. Hi, I just want you to know that I'm under investigation today and, for murder. But I do have a desire to stop drinking, but I just wanted to inform everybody. How are you going to know? Anyway, I don't think anybody's going to say that. Although, I don't know, sometimes the way we blow up our stories, maybe somebody would.
I don't look at anonymity the way other people
Well,
look
see,
at it.
that's right. You're right there. There's a misunderstanding here. We filed the lawsuit because my daughter's death could have been prevented by AA, Mendez said. I'm not sure how. We don't want any money. I want to clarify this. We just want people to know what's going on in those meetings. Weeks before the murder, a friend of Brada called the police because Earl had allegedly beat her. The lawsuit suggests Brada's AA sponsors, Patrick and Joanne, I'm not going to mention their last name, they do in the report, along with Santa Clarita Alcoholics Anonymous, were also at fault. The Mendezes say that their daughter's two sponsors coerced Brada into bailing Earl out of jail and dropping the charges against him. Well, maybe they did.
Yeah.
But that's not the AA World Service Office's fault.
That was two people in AA who...
Yeah. And I don't know that they did or they didn't.
Mm-hmm. That's right. It's alleged, but...
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a ton of questions about that. So,
Yeah.
it's just amazing to me what takes place and what doesn't take place.
We are not we're not a source of tremendous mental wellness.
No.
Far
from it.
In our fellowships.
Yeah.
Right?
And if anonymity is the spiritual foundation, what do they mean by that? I think it's if we've learned we've recovered from this hopeless state of mind and body. It's now, are we willing to set our stuff aside for the betterment of the other person? And we get a chance to, for the first time in our life, to practice that, to do that. That's why it's the spiritual foundation. So anonymity in this context means that am I willing to set my stuff aside? See, now, so here I got this guy that's sitting in front of me, and if he's actively participating in criminal activity, I'm going to tell him that, I can't work with him. You see what I mean? If he's a child molester, then I'm not going to work with him.
You mean practicing?
Practicing child molester. You see what I mean? Mm-hmm. But if I'm willing to put my stuff aside for the betterment of him, am I a closed-mouthed friend that can help him to see his need for God?
Yes.
Because, see, I can't change his desires and those type of things. And so why would I have this person bailing people out of jail? Mm-hmm. Seriously. I want them to take an honest and clear appraisal of themselves where they can see their need, and each individual has to do that.
Let me ask you guys a question. In this kind of is around the fourth step. I was working with a guy many years ago on his fourth step, and he admitted to me in the 4th step and moving into the 5th step, that he had taken somebody's life and had never been caught.
That's heavy.
That was really heavy. Now, I will tell you, thank the Lord, he actually took care of that on his own.
Wow.
But I didn't know what to do with that. You know? And when I found out he had taken care of it on his own, the very next day,
Wow.
I have to tell you, there was a weight off my shoulders. I didn't know what to do with that.
See, we can't have people giving advice for that. You know what I mean? Because you're going to get all these different opinions.
Sure.
But I think that if you truly have entered into this spiritual realm, then the dependence would fall. And maybe it was a good case for you to learn just how much you needed God and his direction in your life. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And now who am I to tell you that you have to do this or you have to do that? It's based upon your best and sound judgment at the time.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and what are you using? Your own feelings and emotions to make this, or are they rooted and grounded in some kind of principle that doesn't change? See? And to even carry that out, I believe you need the strength of God. Because sometimes to do the proper thing is very hard and very painful.
Well, and what went through my mind when that was happening was, as far as I can tell from different things I've read about policies coming out of the General Service Office, is that the law always trumps any of our traditions or our literature. It always says we're to obey the law. And to conceal a murder from the law, that would be me breaking the law at that point. And so I got to tell you, I was sweating it. And thank goodness, you know, I'd be really curious to know if anybody else has had that experience, what you did.
Oh, I'm sure that people have had those experiences all the time.
Yeah.
Maybe not murder, but other crimes that that
bet.
are, you know, it puts that person as a danger to society in some way. You know, I was thinking about when you were talking, though, Monty, that from a biblical perspective, the humility that we need in working with others comes from God forgiving us of our own sins and shortcomings. And also Jesus broke it down when the Pharisees brought the case to him, what about a man who commits adultery?
Sure.
And he said, well, I'll tell you the truth is that if a man even looks upon a woman and thinks about her in that way, he has committed that sin. And then another place in Scripture it says if we have sinned in one area, we're guilty. You know, if we have fallen short in any way, we fall short in every way.
In every way.
So that's the necessary humility when we're listening to some people. And by experience, I've experienced some things in my life that made me I went from being a judgmental person in some areas to having a great deal of humility because of my own life experiences. But really what it's taught me is that is the perspective I should have in all things, not just things that I've experienced personally. I can't relate to somebody that would take somebody else's life, and yet
Right.
I'm not one iota above that person that has done that.
That's right.
From a biblical perspective.
I think that's exactly what we're supposed to be practicing, is what you're talking about.
Yeah. And we can only do that with God. There's no way in the flesh that I'm going to respond in a loving and humble way to people that I see have wronged others or wronged me.
If you can't do that and you recognize that, then you're going to go to God with a form of humility. See, then we're able to humble ourselves under the mighty hand of God that we're talking about in Peter.
Yes.
You see, and so we want to do that. You know what I mean? And I thought that it was God, but see, God equips us for we can do that.
Yes.
And it's a wonderful thing, but we have to practice it. We have to carry it out. We have to practice this spiritual thing, this biblical, under a biblical context like you're talking about. What has he forgiven us for? If we're standing at the foot of the cross and we see that it was our sins that have him up there, then we'll be able to turn and extend the same grace that was given to us. That's living out of what he's already done. That's not working for something.
Right. That's true.
You see, so now we're working under a different standard. Mm-hmm. But we have to practice that and do that. That's what you're talking about. That's why these steps are so important, for we can start to see those things and recognize what it is that we're supposed to do that's not so general anymore.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
All right, we're going to take our first break and come back. Cecil's got trivia for us, and then the topic, understanding step 4. So don't go away. More with Eve, Bruce, the cat's here, the dog's here. We're all here, and we are all together.
I'll tell you about Buster Brown.
Hey, look! Running around in the meetings, gobbling up gallons of bad coffee, flapping his gums wherever he can bring a smile to a hurting face. It's Slogan Man! We know cute little platitudes and sayings on the wall in a 12-step meeting won't keep you sober, but they sure will make you think, consider, and even laugh your way through an otherwise crappy day. Can't wait to get to your home group to hear those slogans over and over and over and over again? No need to. Pick up a copy of the 12-Step Gazette and join the adventures of Slogan Man. Visit www.12stepgazette.com and subscribe today. Slogans and platitudes are no substitute for working the steps, but Slogan Man is very cool.
Free by the Sea is a drug and alcohol recovery center located in beautiful Ocean Park, Washington. This facility is amazingly gorgeous, but what's even more amazing is the integrity of the staff and the treatment provided for those wishing to recover from narcotic and alcohol addiction. The folks at Free by the Sea have a passion for presenting the solution to addiction for you or your loved one. To speak with an admission specialist, visit freebythesea.com or call toll-free 800-272-9199. This place is simply amazing.
Okay, it's inventory time because we're going to do some Take 12 trivia around step 4. So here we go with Take 12, step 4 trivia.
That's right. This week, sponsored by Serene Scene Magazine. Serene Scene Magazine is published for individuals who are seeking knowledge, support, and hope. Addiction is a systemic problem, and the content of Serene Scene reflects the complexity of putting addiction into remission, with special attention given to the loved one of the addict. You can subscribe free to Serene Scene Magazine at serenescenemagazine.com. Okay, step 4 trivia. Here we go. Yeah, number 1.
I think that we ought to give trivia to Cecil.
I told you that you could.
We've done it before, Bruce. We did it once, you and I.
Oh, you've done it once? Okay, can't do it anymore. No, you're perfectly welcome to do so.
We did.
Okay, you get 1, 2, 3, 4 and a bonus.
4 and a bonus.
Yeah,
Well, of course, it's step 4.
Step 4.
So, yeah.
Okay, so trivia question number 1. In the 4th step, there are several distinct inventories. How many are there? This is your choices. 1 to 3, 3 to 4, or 4 to 5.
4 to 5.
4 to 5.
Say 4 to 5? Mm-hmm. Can you name them?
Resentments, institutions, sex, fear. That's the 4 that I came up with right away. So.
And principles.
Oh, principles, yes.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to give it to you guys.
But you're saying this. You're saying just 3.
Yeah, because actually, now that I think about it, resentments covers the institutions. That's part of.
Yeah, so it's actually 3 to 4. In the chapter How It Works, when guiding us through the resentment inventory, there are 3 obvious columns to pay attention to. But in reality, how many columns make up the full resentment inventory? Oh, that's the next question. There's 3 to 4. There's resentment, there's fear, there's the sex inventory, are harms done other than sexual.
Oh.
So there's technically 3 to 4.
Okay.
Some people say 3 because sex inventory, they kind of lump in the harm inventory with that. Okay, so in the chapter How It Works, when guiding us through the resentment inventory, there are 3 obvious columns to pay close attention to. But in reality, how many columns make up the full resentment inventory? 3, 5, or 6?
The resentment inventory?
Mm-hmm.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Eve?
I'm going to say 5 as well.
You both are correct. It is 5.
Mm-hmm.
It is 5. They're kind of hidden in there after the 3.
Mm-hmm.
I think Bill's sneaky. Sneaky like that. Okay, I'm going to give you 3, but you're going to work for the other 2. Okay, number 3. In dealing with resentments, we list 3 entities of which we were angry. They are people, institutions, and what?
Principles.
Principles.
You guys are correct. Oh, you guys are wonderful this week. Number 4, in the fear inventory, we are told that we are now on a different basis. What is that basis?
Trusting God.
Trusting God, yes, definitely.
All right, I'm going to give it to you. That's right. It's not working the steps, and it's not service work. It's trusting
If we
God.
don't know the answers to these, and we're going to tell people about step 4,
Yeah, you guys are going
I
to be in
think we're
trouble.
setting ourselves up.
All right, here's your bonus. In wrapping up our 4th step, the last paragraph in How It Works states, in this book, you read again and again that blank did for us what we could not do for ourselves. Was it God, faith, or the 12 steps?
God.
God.
You guys are actually incorrect. It's faith.
Oh.
Oh.
Yeah.
Let me turn to that page. That's how come we had 4. He threw a little stinky poo
Yeah,
in
that
there.
was a little stinky poo in
Yes.
there, wasn't it? Yes, indeedy. All right.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. That was entirely Burrs.
Okay, before we go to the break, Ding, what were you going to tell us about Buster Brown?
Oh, I was just going to tell you. I said, I'm old enough to know about the Buster Brown show. And it went boing, hiya, kids, hiya, hiya.
That cracks me up.
I just think about shoes, Buster Brown's shoes.
Yeah,
Was it the same thing?
It was
No.
a frog. And he says, this is my dog Tag. He lives here too.
In the shoe.
In the shoe.
The cat's name was Keg.
I'm not remembering.
There was a cat?
Yes, there was a cat.
I just remember.
And there was a frog. He says, plunk your magic prongy, froggy. Boing. Hiya, kids. Hiya, hiya.
Wow. I just remember we had Captain Satellite, and then we had, what was the guy, Captain Kangaroo and Mr. Green Jeans, and I remember when he got busted for some sort of sexual deviancy or something.
Mr. Green Jeans did?
Yeah, yeah.
With that, let's move on.
Let's move on. Okay, we'll be right back right after this.
When you hear that bell, you'll know it's time for Recovery 101. Recovery 101 with Bruce, Shelley, and Mark is a recovery broadcast based loosely on 12-step recovery programs. But it's less like a meeting and more like going to coffee afterwards. You know, the meeting after the meeting. Your host used to suffer from insanity, but now they absolutely, unapologetically enjoy it.
That's right.
For incredible fun and informative recovery radio, tune in to Recovery 101 at recovery101.net on your internet dial.
Christ-centered faith-based solutions for youth, adults, and families struggling with life-controlling problems such as addiction.
Drugs and alcohol allowed me to let go of the bundle of fears that were always with me, even if it was just for a little while. But pretty soon I was deep in addiction. After an overdose almost left my son without a mom, I finally decided to come to Teen Challenge. Although I was away from my family for a long time, it was the best decision of my life. Today, I'm clean and sober, and God has more than restored my family, He's transformed it.
For more information and to locate a Teen Challenge center near you, visit TeenChallengeUSA.com.
I wish you could see me now. I wish I could show you how I'm not who I was.
Well, welcome back to the show. That's Brandon Heath with his song, I'm Not Who I Was. Hopefully you're on that path of not just being changed, but being transformed. And this is something that happens many times with many, many people as a result of this step process and developing a relationship with God. Step 4 states, made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. Now, I didn't have too much problem with the word searching, but fearless scared me. It made me fearful. Before we tackle this, let me ask you guys. We know the two areas in step work that we lose people more than any other areas is step 4 and step 9. Mm-hmm. Step 9 being the amends part. And step 4. Why do you think we lose so many people at step 4? Eve, let me ask you first.
It's an incredibly hard idea to look at ourselves as the problem, that we have this issue, that it could be our fault. You know, that's a big swallowing of pride to be able to do that. And I think a lot of people, I think that our egos fight against it, that it's just, if we let go of pointing the finger outward all the time, we have to take responsibility for ourselves. That's hard work.
Yeah. Yeah. Bruce, why do you think we lose so many people at the 4th step?
Well, I think Eve's right. I think that most of us bring a lot of preconceived ideas to the table on what this thing's all about, and it frightens us. And we don't know how to go to it, properly, and how simple and easy it is. I've found that addicts have a real tendency, and alcoholics have a real tendency to get ahead of themselves. And they're working on 4, and they're worried about 5.
Yeah.
You see? So if we can keep them right where they're at and take a look at this thing and use the specific directions that the book gives us, it's a pretty simple thing, but boy, we bring a lot to the table. And usually it's enough to kick us right off the path at this point. We don't want to go forward because of what we've heard and what we've perceived and what we think instead of what is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And if you're worried about fearless like you, how do you approach this thing on a non-fearless basis?
Well, we've worked step 3. That is the assumption.
Right.
See, if you can't go forward, then you go backwards.
I think maybe one of the reasons too is that we have. Be careful saying this. I'm just going to say it. I think we have a lot of people sponsoring people that don't have a clear understanding of how the steps open up the context for the next step, and so we have people trying to teach people how to do an inventory when they themselves haven't completed the inventory, or they themselves don't have a clear understanding of step 3. And so we just have the blind leading the blind, and then it just kind of falls apart.
Yeah.
Agreed.
I can't tell you how many times I've had a sponsor say, I really feel like I need to do this or that. And I'm going, we're not there yet. We're not, at the amends place yet. We're not, I know you owe money to so-and-so, but let's slow down, put the brakes on, because you might just be shooting yourself in the foot unless we properly prepare ourselves. So again, we need to look at the fact that, step 1, you can't fix what you don't acknowledge. You have to completely concede that you're powerless, left to your own devices, that your life's a mess, and you gotta get that. Step 2, you can't. It's got to be a power greater than yourselves, and that's not a human power, so it's not the room filled with people or your sponsor. Step 3, we made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God, and as we continue to grow in our understanding of Him, and then that plays out in the rest of the steps. True?
Yeah, and remember that we're doing a book study and gaining knowledge. isn't going to save us. We can add all three of our
experiences
and knowledge for this thing up, and it's not going to save
Not going to
us.
save the guy who's listening right now.
Yeah.
No.
0 plus 0 plus 0 still equals 0.
Equals 0.
And the cat and the dog and everybody. Yeah.
So it's about learning to make a decision based on these facts, whether you want to do this and apply it in your life.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if I'm applying this in my life, what I'm doing is I'm learning to trust God.
Mm-hmm.
Help me. Right in the middle of this one is that 4-step prayer. To ask Him to give you guidance and direction, to learn to trust Him. See, it's about learning to be God dependent, not step dependent, not knowledge dependent, not sponsor dependent, not meeting dependent. You see what I mean? But all of those things, every one of them, have their place and are of good use.
Sure. So let's look at this. Closing out step 3, it says our liquor was but a symptom, so we had to get down to causes and conditions. This is getting ready to open up step 4. We drank because what? Not because our wife left, not because, I lost my job, not because of this, but because we were alcoholic. Therefore,
I love that word.
I know, me too. That
when
means
I was
get
reading
ready.
it, yes. Well, it also means this. So this is why. I really believe that one line you just read, our liquor was but a symptom. I mean, if somebody reads that and really understands what that means, Mike D is one who I hear a lot talk about. He knew he was an alcoholic before he ever picked up a drink. His life was completely unmanageable. He didn't feel comfortable in his own skin. It was when he picked up that drink, he found a solution.
Yeah.
And so that's a good indicator. And so therefore means because of that, this is why this next piece is really important.
And I think if you're working with somebody and you ask them, do you understand what it means that liquor was but a symptom? And if they don't, we need to go back to the doctor's opinion. We need to go over this again.
Exactly. There's so much the doctor's opinion answers so much. If you've done the doctor's opinion and really studied that and understand what it's saying, it really does make the rest of the book so much easier to understand.
So it says, therefore, we started upon a personal inventory. This is in italics. Pay attention. This was step 4. And then it goes on to say a business which takes no regular inventory usually goes broke. Taking a commercial inventory is a fact-finding and fact-facing process. Ooh, fact-finding and fact-facing. It's one thing to find these things in our lives. It's a whole other thing to face them.
Yes.
That, again, like you said, that's maybe one of the reasons that we lose folks. Mm-hmm. This isn't easy.
No, it's not.
And so it talks about the fact-finding and fact-facing mission of an inventory in a business. It says we did exactly the same thing with our lives. We took stock honestly. First, we searched out the flaws in our makeup, which caused our failure. And then this next statement, he says this word a lot in the first several steps of this book. Being convinced. Being convinced. That means that beyond any shadow of a doubt, I am 100% sold on the fact that self manifested in various ways was what had defeated us. We considered its common manifestations.
Yes.
So there we go again.
There we go.
And he just tackles the biggie right off the bat. He doesn't waste any time.
May I interject here one thing? And Bruce just mentioned it earlier about that alcoholics and addicts, and maybe people in general, I don't know, but we tend to jump ahead and get ahead of ourselves. I know before I had the great sponsor that I did who took me one word at a time through this book and really had me, look at what it meant and really understand what things meant.
Right.
Before that, when I would read those things, I was never convinced before reading on, and because I just wanted to get it done. Let's get this behind me. Whether it was, from a practical stance, I like to get things finished and completed and,
Yeah.
checked off my list.
You bet.
Or whether it's, thinking, well, all I have to do is get through these steps and I'm going to have what these other people have that I admire so much.
So if you're treating doing the steps as a part of your bucket list,
yes,
you may want to reconsider that, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Before I die.
Mm-hmm.
So that being convinced is basically saying you can't go any further until
right.
that's done.
Mm-hmm. And you're doing yourself a favor if you go back to the last place in the steps where you were really convinced, even if you're all the way back at step 1.
Yep. Mm-hmm. So this idea of resentment, I just love it. Resentment is the number 1, in quotations, offender. It destroys more alcoholics than anything else. Now, here is a really interesting statement.
Mm-hmm.
From what? Resentment. Not from alcohol, not from alcoholism. From resentment. From it stem all forms of spiritual disease. This is the only time in the book that we hear the word disease in this context that people misunderstand and want to attach it to alcoholism. It's from resentment that spiritual disease is formed. So let me just say, you don't have to be an alcoholic to be taken out by resentment.
Or maybe the other way around, Monty.
Explain.
Maybe it's from resentment that all forms of spiritual disease are formed.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
And what we're doing, remember, if we want to keep the book just real simple and go through it like you were talking about, I think, which is the proper way, we are looking at the ways it defeated us. We considered its common manifestation. See, remember that went just before we got into resentment as the number 1 offender. So we're looking at something here. It's common manifestation. Everybody's angry. Okay. And what's anger? Just displeasure with another person.
Mm-hmm.
You see what I mean? And whether you've settled that or not, if you'll write those names down and you'll make this list, you'll start to see its common manifestation. And it's important to see that because that's what's going to change your attitude for you to go to God with a different heart.
I think he's really making emphasis on the spiritual side of this thing.
Exactly.
Because we want to, and I don't want to pick on treatment facilities because so many of them are doing it right these days. There's some that aren't, but there are lots that are holistic. But there's a link at take12radio.com that says finding treatment or finding rehab or whatever, and it's a recommendation on a page of what that should look like. And I say, if it doesn't look like this, run. And one of the things is that it's holistic, that it treats the whole person. And so many times we just want to treat the clinical side. Mm-hmm. Well, he makes it clear here, for we have not only, he's saying it, we have not only, for we have been not only mentally and physically ill, we have been spiritually sick. Mm-hmm. That's the whole individual. Mm-hmm. When the spiritual malady is overcome, we straighten out mentally and physically. That makes me think of seek ye first the kingdom of God, and then all these other things will be added.
Yes.
But you see what's taking place here? We're all on the same path here. If somebody was to come to us and talk to us, we wouldn't say, go to 90 meetings in 90 days.
No.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I wouldn't be saying one thing and you saying another. We'd go to somebody and we'd approach them, be making a 12-step call, and we'd be telling them about this method by which we took that led us to a spiritual path that allowed us to recover.
Imagine the frustration of somebody who's the real deal, a true alcoholic, who comes in the door and is told, let us love you till we, you can love yourself, and 90 meetings in 90 days. Even if they've made a beginning, it says on the next page that, our liquor, not our liquor was but a symptom, but on the next page it says to conclude that others were wrong was as far as most of us had gone. And
yes.
That was my story. Over 10 years in AA without working past step 3. And there was no change in me at all. zero
Right.
change.
Right.
So I'm there, and people tell me, "Let me love you till I love yourself."
Yes.
And now it has shifted the whole program of Alcoholics Anonymous to let me see what I can get.
Yeah.
You see, let me see.
Wow, that's
what
a
it'll
good
take.
point,
You
Bruce.
see,
Yeah.
because we've varied from the program. We're trying to teach people just go to meetings and call me every day, and you know I had a friend of mine where we did the buddy system, where we call one another so we wouldn't get loaded. And one day he called me and he says, "Oh man," he says, "I just feel terrible. I want to get loaded." I says, "Well, I got $12.50. What do you got?"
Yeah, that worked out.
Yeah.
I mean, that was the end of that one.
Yes.
Right.
Yep.
Right.
I met my demise on something like that too.
So this is what the program shifts to. Mm-hmm. And our dependence lies in that instead of learning to be, spiritual, to be God dependent, to be conscious of an awareness of what, what's going on.
And unfortunately, I think what happens is it's so easy to make that shift because we like the comfortable. We like somebody telling us, I'll love you till you can love yourself. Pat, pat, pat. I mean, we like that. And in and of itself, that's a nice thing to say to somebody, but that's not the treatment for alcoholism. The treatment isn't sitting in meetings talking about your illness. The treatment is what we're going through in this book. And I think we misunderstand that. And you've heard me say it before. If you have cancer and you're sitting in the waiting room talking to other people who have cancer, that's not the treatment for your cancer. It's not.
If the rooms
point.
are used where people come in and they complain about what's going on with them. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but if that's all that's going on, that's not treating alcoholism. But if you have some people in there that have a solution, that have been through this thing, when that person is there talking, now this person has been armed with the facts and has the appropriate way to make an approach to that person.
So let's talk about what it's giving us an introduction here on how we're going to be doing the other inventories too. They're very similar. It says in dealing with resentment, we could say in dealing with fear, and dealing with sex, when dealing with harm, we set them on paper. And in the it's really interesting to me that in the resentment inventory, we're given permission in the very first column to point the finger.
Yeah.
Very good.
It doesn't last long. But again, you can't fix what you don't acknowledge. So we're allowed to say who we're teed at. We're allowed to say what happened in our perspective. And my perception is my reality. It may be wrong, but it's my reality at the time because that's how I perceive it. It's interesting that when I went back over my 4-step with my sponsor, my perception changed.
Real or imagined.
Real or imagined.
Is what you get to put down here. And remember, you don't have to write books. Just little short phrases. You're the one that's upset. You're going to know what you're talking about.
That's right.
So when the 5th step comes, we look at every nook and cranny of that situation.
And that's another reason I think we lose people is they think they got to write a novel. And who wants to do that? That's hard stuff.
I couldn't spell. I needed somebody sitting across the table from me that I could trust that could help me spell for I could read. You see, I mean, it was that, and I got it done. You see, because it was that important to me because of step 1.
Right.
Okay, I knew what step 1 was all about. I knew it was just a matter of time.
Yes.
Thorough does not necessarily mean lengthy.
Oh, very well put.
It doesn't. I tried that. I got to tell you guys, I had a binder. I had graphics. I had charts. Because I was just learning computer stuff.
Knowing the old Monty like I do, this does not surprise me.
That's amazing.
And I took it to my sponsor, Doug, and as soon as he saw the binder and it had a cover on it and a sleeve on the side, he said, "I don't want to look at that." I'm like, what? You know how hard I worked on this?
This is a work of art.
I had a picture of a guy with his foot on another guy's neck, yanking on his tie. I drew it myself. I mean, I was just so proud. And they didn't even want to look at it. So he pulls out this piece of ratty paper from a spiral notebook. He gives me a pen. He goes, I want you to reconsider this, and so I went back, and it was pretty simple, actually. So we have the resentment inventory, and there's columns. I think it's interesting sometimes in book studies that are really book shares and not studies.
Yeah.
But the way they did this in yesteryears was when they got to this place, and it says, we put pen to paper. In the meeting, they would stop and they would start putting pen to paper.
Mm.
You do what the book says at the time. And if it says we stopped and prayed, you stop and prayed. Try that today. If you're reading a piece out of the big book.
Remember, if I'm doing a book study, and it's a book study to give them the information whether they want to do this or not,
right,
is different than doing the step. But if I have some individuals that I'm sure have done 1, 2, and 3, and we get to 4, I want them to start.
Oh, immediately, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
If not, we're going to lose them. Hey, we have thoughts that pile in there and ideas why we don't have to do this, and these preconceived ideas.
Yeah, you bet. Mm-hmm. For the sake of time, we don't have time to go through every one of these inventories and so forth, but I will share with you guys something that has saved my behind at least 1 million times, literally.
Where are you?
At bottom of page 66, moving over to 67. I have my sponsees memorize this. I think it's that important. We're given instructions in here. Again, this is not a book of suggestions. This is a suggested program. This is the suggested in its entirety. It says this was our course, and we're talking about these people that we have in column 1. It says we realized that the people who wronged us were perhaps spiritually sick, though we did not like their symptoms and the way they disturbed us. And then this is underlined, they like ourselves. That levels the playing field.
That's the humility that's necessary.
That's the humility. We're sick too. And then there's a prayer directive. It says, we ask God, that means we're going to pray now, to help us show them the same tolerance, pity, and patience that we would cheerfully grant a sick friend. And my sponsees and I always chuckle at the word cheerfully. Mm-hmm. You got to add a little humor in here. You do. When a person offended, so it says what to do. We said to ourselves, this is a sick man. But we don't just stop there. Then we have an assignment. How can I be helpful to him? God, save me from being angry. Thy will be done. I am telling you, when working with somebody, because people will come back and say, yeah, but they. And you try to reel them back in, and they'll go right back to it.
Yes.
Well, now there's this situation, and they. And I say, okay, let's look at this again. When a person offended, this is what we do. Even if you don't feel like doing this.
Yeah, I don't know of anybody that's wanted to.
No.
I think that this is a good point to point out to Monty that you're absolutely right, and that you're learning to use God and prayer to help you to look at individuals in a different way.
Yeah.
And, in situations, it's him that's going to help you. And I'll just do the fear part for you since we don't have a lot of time. It's real quick. He says, notice that fear is bracketed alongside the difficulties with Mrs. Brown and Mrs. Jones and the employer. So we have this fear inventory we're going to take. Now we're going to take that inventory and we're going to look at things that we did to alleviate fear that didn't work.
Yes.
And that's what we're going to write down that didn't work. Now listen to the very last part of fear. This is learning to trust God and having this experience with him. This is doing this step, not studying this step.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. It says, we asked him to remove our fear. and direct our attention to what he would have us be. At once we commence to outgrow fear.
Doesn't mean it's gone like that, but we at once commence to outgrow.
How are you going to know this unless you practice it?
Yeah.
Not just say, okay, but the minute we put our hand in his and let him take the reins and guide us, the fear starts to dissipate. I've learned that to be true with me.
Yes.
See, because remember, fear in 100 forms, is what drove us to do these things.
Yeah.
With or without resentments. See, there's your fear inventory, and it's very easy to put this down on paper and get from it what we're talking about here to see this God dependence. So you could do the sex.
Wow. I think I'm just going to cut that piece out.
I'm glad we're not on camera right now.
And we'll use it in other areas of the show.
I didn't want that to come across.
We know what you meant.
Okay, pass.
Well, you think about this, the sex inventory. When you think about it, think about when this was written. Mm-hmm. Now, I've heard people, and I used to do this, complain a little bit that they didn't spend much time in this area.
On the sexual inventory?
Right.
Oh, it
right.
was so freeing to do the sexual inventory.
And that maybe they should have expounded on it more because it's such a huge piece. But when you consider about when this was written, this was a ton back then. Because you just didn't talk about this stuff.
No.
You should figure now, right now. And I try to tell people that I did a sexual inventory around my mother, me and my mother, because of how my conduct, my sexual conduct
affected her.
That's right. That's where that harm comes in. And that was what was so freeing to me. I misunderstood this inventory until my sponsor showed me in the book how it's to be done. And it was a completely different experience, and another one of those, self-effacing and I wouldn't say humiliating, but it definitely showed me that, I'm not an island. My behavior does affect. It has a rippling effect on others.
So it isn't, the sex inventory isn't just all about who you had inappropriate sex with.
That's right.
Or,
it's not about that at all.
That's right.
Or the misuse of your sexual powers over another person, but who is this affected? And it's far-reaching.
It's how my conduct,
How my conduct. And he said, and he uses...
This is where part of your... what do I want to say? Step 9 is going to come from your amends process.
Right.
Okay. So it's very important to see, and we're not going to go out and hurt somebody by telling them about our conduct. But once we've done this and we see the effect that it's had, then we're able easily to go and apologize for our attitude and our conduct. Now it might have been inappropriate.
Right.
We're sorry for it. But if we're still doing the same thing and we're sober, then why make the amends? It's another, I'm sorry.
That's right.
Yeah. The list of some of these wonderful attributes, selfishness and dishonesty, that are listed. This isn't the first time he does this. Bill likes to drive home things to us because we listen by repetition, but he uses different words and different orders of things. But he says we reviewed our own conduct over the years, past. Where had we been selfish, dishonest, or inconsiderate? Whom had we hurt? Did we unjustifiably arouse jealousy, suspicion, or bitterness? Where were we at fault? What should we have done instead? We got this all down on paper, so he's saying it again. We're putting it on paper. And looked at it. So no one likes to look at where they're selfish, self-centered, self-seeking, and how they've harmed others. But he's driving it home again. We must look at these things.
Now, you did it in column 4. Now you're going to do it in the sexual inventory.
Right.
and basically the same things, and reviewed that conduct.
Yeah.
So if you don't see at this point that who you are and your need for God in your life, then maybe you're not doing this. And remember, we're extending ourselves out towards the fifth step.
Yes.
Yes.
Because a lot of this is going to be pointed out. There's a lot of things in repetition that people see, and they start getting real excited, and then they get into the fifth step, and they have to take a clear look at this thing of what's happening and what they've been doing.
Mm-hmm.
One of the promises of step 4 is God can remove whatever self-will has blocked you off from him. What a wonderful promise.
Mm-hmm.
What a wonderful promise. If you've already made a decision, referring to step 3, and an inventory of your gross or handicaps, step 4, you have made, and this is what killed me when I read this. I went, are you serious? You have made a good beginning.
Yes.
I'm like, beginning? Oh, no. That being so you have swallowed and digested some big chunks of truth about yourself. Oh, you mean there's more?
Yeah. But didn't you say yourself, Monty, and it was so true, that this opens the door for the next step?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
See? And if you proceed, great things will take place. And what are we learning to do? What's the one thing that threads through every single step is learning your need for God and God reliance.
Yes. Amen.
See, that's what
That's
we're
it.
talking about.
Bottom line.
We're not talking about something other than that.
That's what this whole book's about.
So
Yeah.
it's vitally important. So we start to see this, and you're teaching some woman that's been terribly abused all of her life, you know, and I'm working with some guy that comes right from the ministry, okay, and he's still an alcoholic, but we use the same method by which, if you use God, he'll open the door and let you peer and see who you are. You know, I'm going to say something. One of the most wonderful things that ever happened to me was God pulled back that curtain and let me see humanity.
Mm.
And all I stood for and who it was. And it was me was looking at, and it wasn't a pretty picture.
No, it's not.
You know, it just was not.
So, Eve, closing thoughts about step 4?
Well, I just think it's one of the most wonderful steps a person can work, that coupled with step 5. In Scripture, in James 5:16, it says to confess our sins one to another so that we may be healed. And then it goes on to say how effective we are after that process as a saint. We are, well, I don't want to use the word saint for those
in the
because
context of AA,
yes,
right?
because it says that, you know, we are not saints, but if you're a Christian, you are a saint. But this process of humbling yourself before God and before another human being, you know, we think that it's going to be a terrible experience, that other people are going to think less of us, blah, blah, blah. There's so many things. The fear comes in 100 forms with this. But with everything that God does in our life, there's so much freedom on the other side. So much freedom. And it's a good thing to do. You will be changed and transformed. I promise you, if you do this step thoroughly, you will not be disappointed.
Yeah. Amen to that. Bruce, closing thoughts?
I can't do any better than that. She summarized 4 and opened 5.
Well, next week, we admitted to God, to ourselves, and another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. And something for you to chew on if you've never thought about it. I want you to chew on the word nature. Because sometimes we misunderstand this. We're looking for the nature of our wrongs. It's more important than the wrong itself.
Very much so.
What's behind it? What's driving it? So that is next week. There you go. Zippity-doo-dah. Right?
Zippity-doo-dah.
All right.
Plug your magic prongy, froggy.
You can listen to this show by going to take12radio.com. And you can type in the number 12 or the word. I'll take you to the same place. You can click on the Listen Online button. It'll start playing automatically. You can go to Podomatic, our Podomatic link. You can also go to our YouTube version. You can find us on Facebook. You can download an app for iOS or for Android. There's just no reason to escape us. So until our next broadcast, my friends, this is the Monty'man along with Eve and Bruce, and we're wishing God's perfect serenity. There it is. There it is. For you. Bye-bye now.
This has been a broadcast of Take 12 Recovery Radio and KHLT Recovery Broadcasting.
Kitty, 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 kitty.